Hey there, toy collector friends and Transformers fans alike. Welcome back to the channel. This is the Time Traveling Toy Collector and this is the Hasbro Studio Series 8603 Blurr figure from the Transformers the Movie animated feature film, now reimagined in this fantastic little box arrangement for a new era, if you like. So this, as we've seen with other Studio Series 86 figures, is a closer reimagining of what Blurr, the character, here in a deluxe, I think it's a deluxe class variation, looked like in his on-screen persona, unlike perhaps the figure that we got released back in the 80s. At a time when, to be fair, engineering for Transformers, while still impressive for the time period, was perhaps, well, was definitely nowhere near as good as it is now. So let's just take a quick look at the box, then we'll crack him out, then we'll have a little look at him next to original Generation 1 Blurr. Some of you are probably aware, if you've seen some of my other videos, that Cup, Blurr and Hot Rod were the first three actual Autobot cars that I actually acquired back in the 80s, because I wasn't huge on the standard range of Transformers. I wanted things different. The cars into robots didn't really work for me, the jets into robots didn't really work for me, but weirdly I was up for Optimus Prime, the Dinobots, etc, etc. Then it got for me interesting because suddenly it was futuristic and there was this time traveling trio in the comics and blah blah blah. So yeah, Blurr, Cup, Hot Rod were for me, if you a kind of gateway into the main range of Transformers figures, or what I perceived at the time to be the main range of Transformers figures. So here on the back you can see Blurr in an action pose that his original variant would never be able to do because, well, joints, legs. And there's his sleek, futuristic car mode. We can see him there with the backdrop, which is included, which is a feature I very much like with these Studio Series 86 figures. There's the logo of the film, and this instance we're going to see captured on the diorama is the battle for Autobot City as Megatron leads the assault, for what technically is no apparent reason, but we're not going to critique the film here. So yeah, logos on the front, logos on the side, some lovely artwork of Blurr here, in keeping with the Studio Series 86 design aesthetic. Quite an expansive piece of clear plastic for us to have a look at the figure, which in many ways is good if you're purchasing it or want to display it in the box. In other ways it may be a tad bad for the environment if that is something that you are concerned about, and we probably all should be concerned about that. However, this first wave, as it were, of Studio Series 86 figures, this is the standard packaging. Things, they are changing, but we'll get there in due course. So let's first and foremost get this figure out of his box. So there he is, all plasticed up with various attachments, and we'll have a look at that in a moment. As a deluxe class, there's not a huge amount of additional stuff going on with him. I'm just trying to get the diorama out. But nevertheless, this diorama in itself is something that I really am a fan of conceptually, because it does give us that opportunity to display the figures in a way that perhaps we haven't had before from the actual manufacturers. So there we see Autobot City, and here we have Cup in all of his plastic ensconced goodness. You'll see I've already gone into the figure and taken off all the various ties, etc., because unlike some things that I will collect, he is not staying in the packaging. I'm going to leave his gun and his other attachment there, his utilitarian attachment there, for now, so that they don't go astray, because as we know, that can happen. And here we have Blurr. Let's get a nice close look at that face. Ooh, he can look quite creepy. There's evidently light piping there around the eyes. Let's see where the inlet is. Yeah, there it is, the top back of the head. A beautiful head sculpt, I would say there. Very, very nice indeed. I really liked the head sculpt on the original Blurr figure because I thought that there was quite a lot of detail and character in the face. There's almost, I don't know, dare I say it, there's almost not quite the same amount of detailing in the face, but nevertheless, I tell you what I'm talking about. It's like he's not here. He is. Here he is. So you can kind of see what I mean. Again, sorry if I just pop you there. New Blurr on the block. But this is, so again, we've seen him in my time traveling trio video, if you've seen that. But he's yeah, he has got a bit of a characterful face. It does look a little bit grumpy, which of course Blurr was not particularly in the film. But nor did he really look hugely like this. And again, coming back to the key issues, I think, with the original Transformers run of figures that are so beautifully rectified nowadays, is the articulation. I mean, there is actually, I don't remember there being this, there is a bit of articulation there in terms of supporting the transformation, but they can't come forwards. His legs can't really come forwards because his body gets in the way, and he has no knees, and he has little pokey feet that have no sort of ankle articulation. You have a little bit of bend on there, but that's really to support the transformation. Anyway, this isn't a video about old school Blurr, but I do think it's nice when we are looking at this particular range, just to cast our mind back at what it is that has inspired this range, and actually inspired certainly myself to be a toy collector, because you know, these Cup, Blurr, Hot Rod really were for me the gateway figures into collecting the Transformers toys. So for me, I'm particularly connected to these figures, and it's great to see them re-released and honoured, I suppose, because I know I didn't collect toys relentlessly from the point of view, from childhood to today, so I don't have. Sometimes it feels like it, but I don't have, 30, 40 years worth of toys amassed somewhere, that I'm aware of anyway, and in some ways, sadly. But there were key toys, I think, in my youth, whether they were action figures or they were games or they were whatever they might have been, that resonated with me at a time in my life, and then have encouraged me at a point in my life now to go back and start to recollect or reacquire certain items that I may have had that are lost to time for whatever reason that might be. And I'm sure at some point in a future video I'll talk about. I really like the way his face can be illuminated there. If you're into the shattered glass range, which FYI I'm not particularly, although I can definitely see the appeal. That does give quite a malevolent look to our friend Blurr, who I always think is a little bit characterless in the G1 cartoon and movie. I mean, yes, he's fast. He can do a lot of really fast things and talk really, really quickly. But actually, aside from that, he's kind of lovely, though, lovely, and I'm very, very, very glad to have him. So we can see. Let's get onto the main event of what we're actually here for. We can see how well detailed Blurr's legs are there, and we can see how structurally he's very true to the original Blurr figure and design, but with far more cartoon on-screen accuracy. That said, some of this arm kibble, this bit here I can live with because it's reminiscent of what we had before. To be fair, so is the arm kibble, but it's actually a bit larger proportionately than we had in the good old days. And you can bop, which is always nice to see. So dancing Blurr's a sort of hidden feature there. It's not a hidden feature, I'm just mucking about. But I think it's really, really nice figure. There's a lot of posability there. with the posability though is the fact that these sections here, which serve no practical function if you were Blurr as a robot, so they do kind of get in the way. I'm just going to try and stand him up on the base that he comes with, and adjust his legs slightly, just so we have him in context. Oh, as I knock everything over, and I'll zoom in a bit so we can get a really nice look at that. Yeah, I think again, he's a figure that looks really good against this kind of backdrop. And when I'm looking at people who've got dioramas and sort of real good 3D background images, and model sets that they can stand their figures against, I'm supremely jealous of these people. And I want to know where people get them from. And so if you know where people get them from, and there's somewhere in the UK I can get them from, do drop a note in the comments, because I'd love to hear about it, and I'll very likely pursue it. But yeah, he's a great figure. He's got a lot more character than perhaps the original figure bestowed upon him. I do think these are a little bit of a nuisance. I can see no practical function for them. And I don't know about if you've got this figure already, but there's a little bit of looseness at times in these rear arm guards. Let's call them that. Give them some sort of function, which is a shame, because I think they could do without being there. I love the translucent plastic that's there on his chest with the Autobot logo. I also love that the head design retains this sort of mini spoiler on the top of his head, which of course we've seen, here he comes again, on OG Cup, and of course in the original version that was front and center in his transformation. We shall see whether that's the case with this version of Blurr. I love that there's the little, well, there's so much to love. I mean, you do get plenty of articulation, you get waist articulation. The level of posability that allows for enhanced playability with these new figures, and of course with the evolved Transformers figures in their entirety, is great as far as I'm concerned. I know a lot of people are less than satisfied with some of the quality of the build, and I get that completely, totally and utterly. But for me and my perspective, I'm a real fan of the Studio 86 line. I know different people have different views of the Bayverse, the live action Transformers films that we got in the last couple of decades, thanks to Michael Bay, etc. But I think a lot of us, our hearts belong to Generation 1 Transformers, and a little into Generation 2. So the animated series and the movie was the thing that really stimulated our imagination. And again, you cannot pose, sorry to dwell on this, and I've said it in other videos, I know, but I'll try to bore you with it. Too late, yeah, I get it. But I think the thing with these figures is they really required us. I mean, it's, you know, they're quite blocky, and these were better. These were actually better than the original type of Transformers figures, because they were designed around the figures rather than the vehicles. So yeah, I think there's a real, Hasbro have done a really good job of mining our own imaginations and creativity, presumably because the engineers and designers they've got now grew up with the G1 figures. And I know that we've seen a lot of different ranges, Power of the Prime, Energon, so many different ranges that I've kind of let pass me by. I've not delved too deeply into those. Yes, War for Cybertron, Siege, Earthrise and Kingdom, yes. And I already know for a fact that Legacy, which is the next chapter, soon to be unveiled, well, already being unveiled, but soon to be released upon us, is likely to attract my attention. But a lot of the middle stuff didn't. But I saw some of these figures be reintroduced and reimagined and redesigned to the point where they didn't really resemble the figures that we knew and loved. And so I think that lost a lot of the emotional, if I can say emotional, attachment that people had for these figures, which I think is a shame. So Blurr, I'm talking a lot more about Blurr and than I thought I would do, actually. But so I see seeing Blurr like this actually really is something I get enthusiastic about. I really love what Studio Series 86 is doing. I know there's the other Studio Series figures that are giving the live action series some great representations, and also some not so great representations. Listening to some of the other video reviewers, you know who you are, who do a sterling job of actually dissecting, not literally, although sometimes dissecting the figures and how they look and how they compare to their on-screen persona, which is all fantastic and marvellous. That's not really my bag because other people do it so brilliantly, so I'm not going to, in the same way I won't subject you to me trying to transform him. I'll just let you know how it goes when I do it in a moment, to give you his alternative mode. But I just really wanted to give you another look at this figure. I think Blurr is very well reproduced here. I think we can see his posability. As ever, I'll put a couple of shots in at the end of the video showing him in action. But what I'll do now is get him transformed up off camera and then reinsert him into his fight for Autobot City, and we'll get a look at his sleek future vehicle mode. So don't touch that dial. And here we go. Here is Blurr fully transformed up into his high-speed futuristic car mode, and it again is extremely evocative of the original 1980s figure, and significantly evocative, supremely evocative of the on-screen representation of Blurr's vehicle mode. Things I love about this is that here we have the genuine spoiler, much as we had with the original Blurr, but it isn't the one from the top of his head. The one on top of his head is almost, if you like, a faux spoiler designed to mislead us, which I love because it's very well thought through. I love the canopy here that rotates to service the vehicle mode, and that we actually have some nice seating. There's not really anywhere to put your legs though, so if you're a mini bot or something like that we were going to pop in there, yeah, I'm cross-legged or nothing, unfortunately. Things that I'm not so keen on, there aren't many, to be perfectly honest with you, because again I think it's a very classy of its type kind of thing, and it's possibly surprisingly, I find it surprising that I'm saying this, it's something that the OG Generation 1 engineering does better than this. I know, I said it out loud. In my opinion, is that it has undercarriage. Now here we can see there's a lot of robot crammed up inside there, which is, you know, fair enough, but it doesn't stick out. He has these two sort of landing feet which we can position him with, so he can sit like that, which is great. And it also, a bit like the old Sand Speeder from the first range of Palatoy Kenner Star Wars figures and stuff from the 80s as well. It does give the sense that he's slightly hovering off the ground, but the Generation 1 Blurr did actually have wheels, which made it possible for him to move freely up and down. I'm not saying that he's completely without freedom of movement in this, because he will slide, but if you're going to slide a vehicle like that, then that's going to leave you, I'm afraid, with some scratches on your surfaces or some scratches on your toy, and depending on your personal take, one of those is going to be more important than the other. But I'm going to leave that to your own discretion as to which is which. But as a figure and as a vehicle mode, it's lovely. He's quite light, sort of a bit standard for a deluxe class figure, but again, a beautiful representation of this figure's on-screen persona, brilliantly evocative of the G1 toy as well as the G1 figure. There's two bits for me in the transformation that get me every time I do it. The first bit is untabbing the legs. There's a section where the legs have to be almost unfurled in order to undertake the transformation, and in my model they always stick, and in my model therefore I'm convinced when I do it I'm applying too much force and I'm going to break it, and that happened again when I just did it just now. So had I done it on camera, there would have been some unpleasant language. Fortunately that did not occur. Secondly, and this perhaps is slightly more important, and again I'm sure it's me and so on, but the instructions that we get, which are just here because I referred back to them in true dinosaur fashion. Very nice instructions, some lovely illustrations. Studio Series 86, Transformers the movie, and gives us info to build the whole cast, which is lovely. We really want to do that. There's a point when you're converting the arms and getting them ready to be this attachment at the side, that these top sections here, you rotate them on the hand itself. There's a rotation in the wrist that facilitates you getting them where they need to be ready for this. I miss it every time. I can't see it in the instructions even, which is what makes me think that it must be me. But I can't see it there. So I miss it every time, and I do all the necessaries, and I always end up with this part of the arm facing the wrong way. And as you may have seen in robot mode, there's a bit of hollow spacing. Now, some of that hollow spacing is there so that you can actually affect some of the tabs so that these things do tab together, which you couldn't do without the slightly hollow interior elements. So I get that, and it's a deluxe class figure, and all of those sort of things that justify why they might not be completely filled in or covered or etc. etc. However, it would look very unsightly and also wouldn't work for the transformation if they did appear on the side here. It would basically mean this section was facing the wrong way, and I always think, oh, I've missed some sort of waist spin or something like that, and I always then have to sort of figure it out from my own experimentation around where the problem is. And the problem is I've forgotten that you move them round at the fists, and then once I get that, everything clicks into place pretty swell. It's not a challenging transformation really, it's just I'm a challenging transformerer, one who transforms transformers. Is that a thing? I don't know. I've made it a thing. So yeah, those are the two things that I would flag. We do have an opportunity. I've taken this blaster out, and it's reminiscent of the G1 blaster. You can, and this because there's storage for it, and the instructions demonstrate that we can connect it. There's a tab here, as you can see under this blade here. So if I just tab that onto there, he says, making it sound easy, and there's a camera sticker sitting on your chin. Yeah, so it sits on there, and that's the extension of Blurr. So he does actually have a battle mode in vehicle, and it's sufficiently off the ground so it doesn't impede his movement, not as much as certainly having no wheels would impede his movement, but I'll let that go. So yeah, that's what the instructions say. I actually quite like the clean version of his vehicle mode, so it's just this. There's not a preponderance of stickerage, so they may have missed some opportunities there, but I like this. It's sleek, clear, it's everything you want from a high-speed vehicle that obviously Blurr gives us in his robot mode. Let me zoom in a little bit more for us there. Yeah, I really like this figure. I really am glad. I haven't yet run across a Studio Series 86 figure that I don't like, so I'm really enamored with this. It really stimulates my memories around playing with Blurr, Hot Rod and Cup as a kid, and boy did they get some punishment as vehicles. So I really love it. Now again, you may be looking at these going, yeah, I know I've collected them all already. You may be looking at these going, well, yeah, I'm not too sure if I'm going to collect them or not. So I'm just sort of wanting to get an up close and personal look at some of these figures. And I know that there's a lot of people out there who've done reviews on these far more in depth and with transformation tutorials. So I very much appreciate you spending the last 25 minutes or so with me anyway. If you found this useful, if you're now in a position to decide whether or not this is something that belongs in your collection, then that's great. And I really appreciate if you'd hit the like button. Similarly, if you were just watching this to pass the time because you kind of like Transformers, or you kind of have a soft spot for the old G1 Transformers being reimagined, it's just a passing interest and it's helped you pass 25 minutes or so, then again, please do hit that like button. In all honesty, it really helps the channel and it lets me know that people are out there watching. Whilst you're doing that, there are far more Studio Series 86 figures to come. By all means, hit the subscribe button and the notifications button so you never miss a future video. I'd just like to say now, thank you very much for your time. You've been a fantastic audience. This has been the Hasbro Studio Series 86 version of Blur, and I've been, as always, the time-travelling toy collector. I hope you've enjoyed what you've seen so far, and I hope to see you in a future video. In the meantime, do please remember that a thing of beauty really is a toy forever, and I will see you in the future. Take care, and bye-bye for now.